Before we get started, there are 2 discs, 3 documentaries in total that may make the documentary Entities, which is almost finished, by the way, make a whole lot more sense. This is Trey Smith, and you're watching a portion of the bonus disc of the DVD Nephilim. I wish you could see that thing in real life. That is just... This one looks sharp too. Isn't that an amazing looking disc? And if you really liked the first Nephilim, there are actually 2 documentaries on this one disc. When you open the title screen, you have these 2 here. Buckle your seatbelts. We're hitting play on As It Was in the Days of Noah, right about now. Matthew 24, beginning in verse 3. Now as he sat on the Mount of Olives, the disciples came to him privately, saying, "Tell us, Master, when will these things be? And what will be the sign of your coming and the end of the age?" And Jesus answered them and said, "Take heed that no one deceives you. For many will come in my name, saying that I am the Christ."
Well, God, I guess you're my best friend, being I invented you.
You believe in God's promise?
Sure, I believe in myself. Why wouldn't I? Which one?
Are you Jesus Christ?
Which Jesus? There's all kinds of Jesuses. There's a black Jesus down in Florida. He's having a good time. There's a Mexican Jesus in Mexico. I mean, there's all kinds of There's a Jewish Jesus. I mean, Jesus, you know. There's all kinds of Jesus coming back everywhere. And nothing can stop it. It's a consciousness that lives in your mind.
Satan gave me this mess. It's a lie of the devil. I shouldn't have said that.
"And will deceive many, and you will hear of wars and rumors of wars. See that your hearts are not troubled. For all these things must come to pass, but the end is not yet." Everything just listed above are commonly used as signs of the end. But what Jesus is specifically stating in this passage is that these are non-signs. For these things must come to pass, but the end is not yet.
Comes as the Islamist militant Al-Qaeda affiliated group ISIS increasingly spreads its wings on the ground.
Well, I mean, at least they don't make it terribly confusing. The spirit behind that movement is, "For nation will rise against nation and kingdom against kingdom. There will be famines, pestilence, and earthquakes in various and diverse places. All these are merely the beginning of sorrows."
The White House is now condemning the slaughter of Ethiopian Christians by ISIS.
"Then they will deliver you up to tribulation and kill you, and you will be hated by all nations for my name's sake."
You may want to have the children leave the room right now. But the reason we're showing you this is to bring you the reality of Islamic terrorism.
Those are some awfully strange words for merely the son of a carpenter. But that is in no way the end of it. To the contrary, that's just where we get started. Jesus continues, verse 15. "Therefore, when you see the abomination of desolation spoken of by Daniel the prophet standing in the holy place, let whoever reads, let him understand." When Jesus says the abomination of desolation spoken of by the prophet Daniel, I guess we must know that he's talking about some future event. After all, you would need the temple back in Jerusalem, and Jesus himself predicted the destruction of the temple, which occurred as depicted in this scene here in 70 AD. Now wait a second, I'm pausing the bonus disc for a minute. You probably clicked on this link because you wanted to see some really spooky stuff that challenges the very boundaries of reality. Like this clip here, filmed at a UFO summonsing event in Los Angeles. And it's not just dimensional stuff, shadow people, alien summonsing, which is strangely similar to demon summonsing, but also the biological stuff is not limited to just elongated skulls that are missing the suture lines. Doesn't take much research before lots of high strangeness begins to crawl its way forth from the ancient world, where this pulsating little man-looking thing, seeming to almost step right through into reality itself. You can see his little leggies there. It almost looks like he's got arms. You can see his head occasionally just pumping and piercing through as if struggling to keep its form in our physical reality. Almost looks like he's got little wings on him, doesn't it? You know, it's always been my opinion that before one goes summonsing things that they don't really understand, it's a good idea to maybe investigate who exactly it is right on the other side of the veil that is so dearly wanting to wiggle and slip its way in. It's certainly true that there's been no shortage throughout all of human history, both recent and past, including through every age of human history, all the way back to the very beginning, who all seem to understand very precisely, exactly who was on the other side of the veil of this present puppet show. Now, there's a lot of people out there that are desperately crying out for the government to give them disclosure about UFOs and perhaps crashed UFOs and the anomalies in the sky. That's actually pretty funny to me. Now the government, these are the people that have been so abundantly honest with you about everything else, right? Now, when one thinks about strange things from the ancient world, one thing that comes to mind are the giants, like these jaws and these photographs seen right here. And these are authentic, by the way. Or perhaps all the strange skulls out there where Brian Forrester is in South America, who's in the bonus disc, by the way, and more of these elongated heads stretching all the way from South America to the sands of ancient Egypt. And in the video, entities got a special body that I'd like to talk about that goes all the way back to Isis, Osiris, and Horus. This is a skull on the screen here that is curiously similar to Lloyd Pye's famous Star Child. Here's what Lloyd Pye's skull looked like, which was found in Mexico, strikingly similar to the one found recently here in Peru. It becomes more and more difficult to argue that it's some type of extreme medical anomaly when the things have friends. It's being held in the hands here of Brian Forrester, who is a friend of mine that does tours in Peru, as well as other locations, on the elongated skulls and also the megalithic structures around which strange skulls like this one with the unusual nasal passageway are found. This site at Bellback, not dissimilar to stuff in Peru and stuff out there in ancient Egypt and other locations within Mexico, comes actually from one of Brian Forrester's tours. He's made a very strong case to me, just as he does within the Nephilim bonus disc, that stones and artifacts like this one on the screen here, it's hard for him to imagine that this was done as it's currently ascribed by the university scholars and professors. They believe that this was done by the Romans. He believes, just as he believes in many, many other cases, which he makes very strong arguments for, that very often this is the case with these archaeological sites, that they were not put together by the cultures for which they were ascribed. In this particular case, you're looking at an enormous piece of stone. Can you imagine even 100 guys this size moving that rock that he's standing on top of? Notice that the eyes are not in a standard location, and they're all very shallow. We go over this skull just a touch more within the Nephilim bonus disc, but I'd also like to talk about the DNA that's being found within a wide variety of these strange anomalies that are being found. He seems to feel, and I've certainly come to agree with him on this, that many of these sites, like the Baalbek site, are much older than they're given credit for, and the origin of the movement and the precision of these enormous megalithic stones, that at bare minimum the intelligence behind the organization, the technology, and the knowledge to manipulate and organize, if this is how it was done, massive amounts of the local culture to achieve the site at bare minimum, is not being given the fair credit that it deserves. And mind you, these enormous and hard to believe that it's even real skulls, not the headbound stuff that the locals did later, but the authentic stuff that is just in your face and hard to believe that what you're looking at is even real. Like this skull on the screen right here with the giant head on the back. And if there's any correlation between head size and intelligence, the authentic and genuine ones of these skulls appear to be leadership, kings, and priests at these occult centers from the ancient world. In the case of Lloyd Pye's Star Child, although you'll find a variety of reports from different opinions from those with an interest in and those who are professionals in genetics, one of the things that tends to be the same in layman's terms, or even take that further, can you imagine even 500 guys dragging that stone? Look at how far down it is to the people down there underneath, and this is just one rock, mind you, dealing with the genetics on any of these strange characters that are being unearthed, is that they're almost human plus, might be a way to describe it. Now, from a genetic perspective, you're looking at individual structures in the DNA that are from the local culture with a little something added in there to the mix. Sites like this one here at Baalbek, what you've got is you've got an ancient occult culture of some type, whichever one you wanted to argue that it was, where the Romans came in later at this particular site and they built on top of the site. Now, the Romans also used this site for occult practices to the god Jupiter, which is the same thing as the god Baal or Beelzebub or the devil. As an interesting side note, when talking about the cult of Jupiter or Zeus or Baal, which are all actually one and the same thing, Alexander the Great, depicted as statue right here on the screen, who won an unusual and actually unwinnable battle against the Persians when he went up against them, and the Greeks would become the new world dominating force from that point forward by this man right here, who would go on to conquer 90% of the known world at that time, and also die just a hair short of his 33rd birthday. Alexander's mother, Olympias, commonly told everyone that Alexander, who didn't look a whole lot like his father, King Philip, the one-eyed King Philip of Macedonia, she went on to tell everyone that Alexander's true father was actually the serpent, or Zeus, or Jupiter, depending on what account that you read. This is an old painting of Olympia. I've censored out the sizable dirty parts in the imagery. This is Jupiter that is slithering in. Notice that Jupiter is commonly depicted with the serpent as the last half of his body coming in from some other realm to seduce Olympia. Up here on top, you've got the imagery of the phoenix, the same imagery that you're going to see right next to the Inky wearing sort of the wizard's hat at the top of the imagery from ancient Samaria, the opening little god that would poke up into physical reality when being summoned in at the pyramid, or the ziggurat, or the Tower of Babel, ziggurat of Eridu. Whether Olympia, the serpent goddess's words about the true father of her son, Alexander the Great, who seemed to have a real taste for blood and took so many unusual victories, whether or not her words were just a clever marketing ploy for the Greeks that became legend, or if her words were based on some semblance of reality, I leave in your hands to decide. Nonetheless, I find the legend behind Alexander the Great noteworthy. Wait a second. The biological freak show from the ancient world by no means stops there. How about something just like this here, right off of the bonus disc? A skull that I'm fairly certain that you haven't seen before. Now, the skull we're actually going to look at up close and personal and go through the details of in the bonus feature disc, and look up deep inside of, far enough to even where the brain is. This thing on the screen right here was found where they practice hardcore occult in the past. In fact, the very place where Charles Manson is recorded to have partied. This thing here that's had university professors tied up in knots was found by my friend Joe Reimer. But on the flip side of that coin, it appears to be not terribly difficult to confuse the vast majority of the university crowd. Their entire evolutionary faith system is based on theory from Charles Darwin, who had a degree in theology and religion from Cambridge University in 1831, and as far as anyone can tell, exactly zero experience and certainly no degree in any science whatsoever. His religious views disagree with, of course, the fossil record, basic genetics, and at this point today, we've had long streams of hoax, fake, missing links. Yes, it's true. They claim that this thing on the screen is real. There are no monkey men that have been found to date. And I, for one, don't believe they existed at all. I cover that redundantly in a variety of other videos. And mind you, that question only gets worse when you start asking them what led to the monkeys. If you want to get them really tangled up in knots, ask them what led to enormous creatures like the dinosaurs. I believe firmly that the picture, in all respects, is much larger in scope than what you're being told. the entire universe, no matter how they draw it, from one week to the next, at its base fabric level, behaves absolutely identically, not just to an intelligent construct that is produced from a much larger source, but more than that, every particle within this place behaves like a subset of a much larger and far more complex reality. And within the Nephilim bonus disc, we take quite a lengthy little look at the geometric and dimensional messages from the Orbish characters that seem to zip around and like making these dimensional designs, like this serpent seen on the screen right here on the ground. I've got a few opinions on what exactly their drawings and their graffiti in the cow fields might mean. And within entities, I'd like to take a look at the larger scope in a way that I haven't done on video before. Here's, in a sense, the short summary version of this. When one takes the actual records that we have in this place, like the pages of Genesis, the book of origins, the book of genes is, these are some of the most attacked pages in the entire Torah. I don't believe for one human heartbeat that that's accidental. Also taking into consideration other texts that also seem to pierce to the other side of the global flood, which is covered by every single, save not one, culture on the entire earth. I'm going to be humbly submitting to your hands within both of these videos the reasons why I take texts like the Book of Enoch extremely seriously. Also addressing some of the issues that have been raised about the Book of Enoch. This particular section of text right here, you're getting the actual origin of demons. Then taking into actual account the data from our sciences. Notice I use the word data, not what they tell you that the data means, but actually putting it in your hand so you can look at. And I had this strange feeling that your interpretation of the data could actually turn out to be, I don't know, different than theirs in a large variety of respects. Taking also into account the occult texts, particularly the two oldest texts, and precisely what those cultures are stating. Plugging in, of course, the actual artifacts that we find in bulk and mass, along with their megalithic temples and the writings, which in many cases they're not just telling you these stories, which all come together like a glove all across the globe, but in many cases they're actually attempting to draw it for you. The very trackable weakening of DNA from ancient man right up to this modern version, of course, peering into that pre-flood world, looking at the rise of your early cultures in these two areas here, where the Tower of Babel or Ziggurat of Eridu is, just outside of Ur, hopping over to ancient Egypt, following then the very highly specific pagan and occult practices behind every one of your pagan cultures, the first 6 of them, leading straight on through the time period when all of your original 6 empires kind of transformed into religions to this point here, and then what you may hear occasionally from those in the witchy groups when they use terms like an ancient hope, arriving finally at your empire that lasts only a short spans, the technological Tower of Babel. There are a lot of speculations floating loose on when events from the pages of Revelation start. Yeah, that may be the wrong question. Yeah, from my view, I'm pretty certain that I could demonstrate to you. You're already living in it. And of course, the large-scale ideas being implemented one at a time through your opening 6 early cultures are going to match identically with 6 of the largest, most critical teachings of what you're finding the fallen angels teaching prior to the flood. As if somebody is filling out a little checkbox, making it all the way to the false finish line. And the astounding thing about all of this is not the coming history written in advance that hasn't actually occurred yet, but the literal thousands of prophecies about both world history and also the suffering servant, sacrifice, and the returning king, which thousands of them dealing with world history have actually precisely been fulfilled to date. There's a lot being discussed there. Some of what I just went over, a lot of it is in those 2 bonus discs that are on in those 2 bonus documentaries that are on the bonus DVD. And quite a wealth of it is being precisely covered, including the science stuff, which will all fit together with the archaeology, your records. It will all come together like a perfect weavework that lights up like a bulb. That decision I lay humbly in your hands, and I make one request with all of my stuff, and that's that you not take my word on any of it. I'm merely providing you the data so that you can investigate it within your own heart for yourself. That being stated, there's a part of one of the 2 Nephilim bonus documentaries that I'd like to play you a clip of right now that's important to me. It'd be up for public view.
For security purposes.
One thing that I always kicked myself a little bit for was in the original Nephilim video, not going just 1 sentence further. Nonetheless, all things, I guess, happen for a reason. But this prophecy in Daniel 9:25 that's predicting the exact day that the Mashiach, the Messiah, will come, the day that Jesus rode the donkey through the front gates of Jerusalem, and the people were crying out and declaring him as the Messiah, the King. And this only happened on one very specific day. What most don't realize is that the whole way Jesus was riding that donkey, he was actually crying, "O Jerusalem, O Jerusalem, you who stone the prophets." That prophecy given by Daniel, the beginning date is March 14th, 445 BC, for the rebuilding of Jerusalem. That's specifically what it says, and that is specifically the date of that prophecy. 69 weeks, and in Daniel it specifies that these are weeks of years. These are 360-day years, just like pretty much every calendar of the ancient world. To the triumphant entry on April 6th, 32 AD. This would be 69 times 7. This works out to 173,880 days. That is on the money. And no one could argue that that prophecy in Daniel was not written in advance, because the book of Daniel is in the Septuagint, which was written at least 270 years before Jesus Christ. But if we go one sentence further to 9:26, it reads this: "And after 62 weeks," weeks are always years, "shall the Messiah be karat." That's in Hebrew. The word karat means cut off, publicly executed. This is what it says in the text nearly 500 years beforehand. The sentence goes a little further: "But not for himself." Let me ask you, if it's not for himself, who is the Messiah being cut off and publicly executed for? Now learn this parable of the fig tree. There are forces in play that are much beyond the minds of men. And one of them, the little bitty one, the deceptive enchanter of the Pikes and Blavatskys, the one who makes slaves of otherwise free men, the local service provider of every dark age and empire, is watching the lease slowly run out as the last grains fall through the hourglass. Back a fair number of years now, when I first started doing videos, and nobody would have known me from Adam. I was working on actually the hardest video of any of them that I've done and put together, the theory of everything, which dealt with time and space, matter. You had dinosaurs, and you had everything in there. And a woman came up to me and said the strangest thing. She said I had been praying, and she said the Lord spoke to me, and he said, of everything that I've made, time may have been my wittiest invention. So yes, we're going to do some pretty in-depth walkthroughs of some of the circus of biological madness and these little Nephilim kids that seem to keep popping up here, there, yonder, and primarily spiking in places like Peru, surrounding ancient temples, in areas where men such as my friend Brian Forrester work. These pages, by the way, where I'm showing you in this particular video, are right off of God in a Nutshell, where it's pretty easy breakdowns going step by step with a lot of this stuff. It's really helpful when you're watching the videos. And accordingly, hardcore occult, which is actually inseparable from your sciences. You almost have your sciences down here that are for the common man. You came from monkeys. Well, I mean, in a practical sense, you've always got your junk food to be spit out to the goyim, right? And then on top, you've got the pursuits of the world empires, as if down here they say none of it's real, man, none of it's real, don't believe any of that. And then up here they're saying, I think it's real, man, I think it's real, I think we're talking to somebody on the other side of this ball. And I would argue that those are the inception of dangerous games, and that it has been known for a very long time, all the way back to the beginning, that there are things that can step right out of thin air and reach out and touch you. Of course, there are many of you watching these videos I already know that. Let me be very clear about this from my most humble view. Any man that believes that deals can be made between devils and men has already very deeply deceived himself. I'd like to play another little clip that's from the bonus disc of Nephilim that I wasn't originally going to include in this upload, but felt it was important. Here's the clip. All of the old players, specifically the players important for the book of Revelation, have all seemingly appeared back on the map. The last one to blossom being the fig tree, Israel. Bet that's just a coincidence. For those of you who are Jewish, living in Israel, that are watching, there in Matthew 24, there's a statement which Jesus makes. Those who are living in Judea, when you see the abomination of desolation, flee into the desert, specifically the mountains, that direction, the direction that stuff is. Let me interpret that passage for you. What it means is, if you want to save your rear end, move it at lightning speed. Don't pull a Lot's wife and look back or gather your things. And when Israel finally gets surrounded and all hell has broken loose and all hope in anything else has been both exerted and lost, just like when you were in the canyon with Pharaoh's army behind you and the waters of the Red Sea were sitting there and there was no earthly hope. When the waters need to part again, that's the hour. That's the hour where you play the last card that you've got left. You're holding the wild card. In that hour, you play that card and you play it well. And I'll give you a hint what that card is. The same name that stops the aliens is the same name that stops the hordes of hell. There's someone else that wants the victory that day. Not for you. In fact, he specifically says that it's for his own name's sake. It's for the deal that he made with your forefather, Abraham, thousands of years back. A lot of us are banking on you to play that wild card at the moment that it matters most. And let me let you in on a secret. I already know you will.
That becomes a very significant year.
I'd like to go ahead and let one of the two documentaries that's on the end of the bonus disc, the very tippy end of one of those two documentaries, go ahead and play itself out and let that be the end of this particular upload. This is a section within the bonus disc DVD that comes right after a part that I call the demons and the corn, where we analyze these little messages that seem to get more and more complex in the fields. All of that. Why does it need your permission? Many, if not most, if not actually all, of your mainstream science crowd are really pushing the alien kick. And this would even include atheist speakers like Richard Dawkins, who recently stated that as DNA looks like information, I'm paraphrasing, that maybe aliens did it. Stephen Hawking is another man that has been making documentary videos that there are probably aliens that we'll find at some point. My heart has really torn for this man. On a number of occasions, I've been brought to my knees crying because of him. A lot of his popularity circles around the fact that he says that there is no God. I find symbolism interesting. Stephen is paralyzed in his entire body except for his eye, and he uses this eye, a machine attached to this eye. He uses the last muscle that he's got left to say that there is no God.
Each free to believe what we want. And it's my view that the simplest explanation is, there is no God. No one created the universe, and no one directs our fate. This leads me to a profound realization. There is probably no heaven, and no afterlife either. We have this one life to appreciate the grand design of the universe. And for that, I am extremely grateful.
Stephen has been a large supporter of the Big Bang Theory. I'm not personally a big fan of it. The Big Bang Theory got its name from physicist and mathematician Fred Hoyle, who coined the term Big Bang because he thought it was a big joke. The actual name of the theory comes from someone making fun of it. In the beginning, there was nothing, then it exploded. It's a tough pill to swallow. The Big Bang is actually based on or requires what's called the nebula hypothesis, or the evolution of the solar systems. This was come up with by Emanuel Swedenborg in the 1600s. Without the nebula hypothesis, the evolution of the solar systems, the Big Bang doesn't exist. It doesn't work. Emanuel Swedenborg told everyone that he got the nebula hypothesis theory during a seance that he did, that the entities, that the angels told him this theory. Back then, that kind of thing was fashionable. That being stated, what I've been telling the science community for quite some time, to properly test the Big Bang Theory and those foundations, at least from my view, what they're going to need to do is find a witch, throw her in the river, and see whether or not she sinks or floats. Stephen had a variety of theories concerning black holes, which during the black hole wars were disproven, or at least largely disproven, by Dr. Susskind, who, funny enough, disproved Hawking's black hole theories using a toilet bowl flushing as his demonstration material for Hawking's theories. Stephen went out and placed bets at one point. This was actually hard for me to believe. He placed bets at one point with university professors that the Higgs boson, nicknamed the God particle, didn't exist. Maybe he just didn't like the name. I'm not sure. Of course, they discovered the God particle, the Higgs boson, later. He had to give a few apologies for that, pay a few debts. And then after that, Stephen said that he wanted to boycott Israel. Now, here's the funny thing about this. It's not really funny, but from my view, the chair, the apparatus that's keeping him alive, the things that are supporting his life, were built, designed, and constructed in Israel. I would have absolutely loved to have been there that day when the PR people came in and said, I know you're the smartest guy in the world and all, but the chair could break. But I say all of that to say this. The thing that always made, I guess, my heart sink most was that they gave Stephen Hawking Isaac Newton's chair, his position, Isaac Newton's position at Cambridge. Sir Isaac Newton got a lot of things right, to say the least. He contributed, and that's putting it gently, to the very foundations of our understanding of the physics of this place. I find it only appropriate to end this video with the words of Sir Isaac Newton, who held the same chair of the man who, with his one eye, says there is no God. My heart actually has torn for this particular, of all the science guys out there, this particular man, not because of his science and stuff, but I watched a video one time where his family was taking care of him, and I'd like to see him make it. And I'll tell you this, Stephen, and listen to me. I'm not here to dog on you, but let me phrase it like this. The big one, the thing that you're saying, that there is no God, of all the things you've said in your life, right or wrong, it's important, at least from my view, to get that one right. And I quote, "About the time of the end, a body of men will be raised up who will turn their attention to the prophecies and insist upon their literal interpretation in the midst of much clamor and opposition." Sir Isaac Newton wrote a whole book on the prophecies in Daniel. And Stephen, even the demons playing in the backfield with the crop circles, even those demons know there's a God, and it benefits them nothing. It's certainly my view. The true science is merely the study of how God does business. I'm Trey Smith. God bless every last one of you on the other side of this screen. You just watched the end of one of the two documentaries on the bonus disc. I think they're both pretty strong documentaries. Guys, I think you're going to like them. Hang in there another minute with me, guys. I never quite end the videos the moment that I think I'm going to. Make sure you record the whole body on all of these. Entities is coming, guys, and it is a fireworks show. It'll probably be the very, very tippy end of July. That's what I'm trying to get to happen. But there is a lot there. It is almost finished. And that's been a long time coming.
He moves his tail like a cedar. Some Bible footnotes.
This is my friend John.
Reference to it.
Also, Jurassic is coming, where we're going to go over the actual carbon dating of dinosaur bones, like it is depicted here. Every single unfossilized dinosaur bone, and most dinosaur bones are unfossilized. In fact, the norm is for them to contain soft tissue or original biological material from dinosaurs. Every one of these dinosaurs was teeming rich with carbon-14, and these are multiplicities of different types of dinosaurs. Just to put that in perspective, if the entire Earth were nothing but one big ball of carbon-14, which is like a flavor of carbon that deteriorates, if it were one big ball of carbon-14, it would be completely gone, would have completely diminished, dissolved, be no more after 1 million years. And it's not just dinosaurs that contain it. You've got carbon-14 in all oil deposits, all coal deposits, all diamonds contain, every one of them tested so far contains carbon-14. Long story short, a dinosaur bone is much smaller in the entire Earth. There shouldn't be any carbon-14 in dinosaur bones. In response to drawings of dinosaurs, accurately drawn dinosaurs found all around the globe, some of them controversial, some of them everyone agrees are drawings of dinosaurs. Carl Sagan took an interest in this at one point, and he tried to amalgamate the evolution theory with the fact that you're finding all of these dinosaur drawings. And this was a statement that he made to that effect. He said they are fossil memories of the time of the dinosaurs. So these are memories that the people had from the time of the dinosaurs that have come down to us through a general mammalian memory inherited from the early mammals, our ancestors. These are memories from 65 million years ago that the people were drawing on stone. I love Carl Sagan. On this particular one, I'm going to have to respectfully disagree. I believe that the people were drawing these images on rocks just like they were drawing birds, bears, elks, and other animals because they were drawing things that they actually saw. And also there have been claims floating loose that dino DNA, blood vessels, blood cells, blood tissue, all of these different things can actually last for millions of years while sweating in the hot sun and loose rocks. We're going to demonstrate within this video that not only is that so far from possible reality, that even suggesting it is a little bit strange. The documentary Jurassic, which goes over a wide variety of things, will be out. We're shooting for June. I think we're pushing that. It will probably be out more like July 4th or right in that ball frame. I think you're going to really like what's in store in the Jurassic video. There's a lot deeper wells of biological and spiritual dimensional stuff in both the bonus disc that's already out and both documentaries that are on it, as well as an intensive and precise amount in the documentary entities, which is at this point today yet to come. And just like the two discs for Noah, where you've got disc 1 and disc 2, it's almost so much crisper in the image to see it in real life, but nonetheless, these just look amazing as well. They came out so nice, guys. 2 discs, and of course the theory of everything. And just like all of the documentaries that I've made so far, they're not only great for when you have friends over and watchable multiple times, but they definitely look good on a coffee table. Get the whole set of them while you're over on godinanutshell.com. Going a pinch further to close this particular video out, I for one find it fascinating how on the public stream of science you're watching science and the occult inch their way closer and closer and closer together. And at the moment that fusion right there occurs, might be time to buckle your seatbelts. You know that part of the roller coaster where it's coming up and it's right on the lip of the hill and about to go straight down? Now imagine that there's no bottom on the roller coaster and a lot of the track under you isn't finished. Now I'm guessing that pretty much everyone watching this video knows about King Solomon depicted on the screen behind me, and also knows the story of King Solomon asking God for wisdom, which is usually the only part of the story that gets brought up. And that's a good part of this. That's a very strong part of the story, no less. And wisdom encompasses knowledge, generally the knowledge of good and the knowledge of evil. Wisdom is a step higher than that, knowing the difference between the two. But wisdom does not necessarily imply that just because you knew the difference between the two, that you acted accordingly. In fact, taking that about 5 steps further, wisdom is a thing to be handled like fire, with the utmost of care. The more I come to learn about God himself, the more that I realize that he redundantly demonstrates within his text that there is, shall we say, a higher bar of responsibility put on the man out front the temple than there is on the man out back in the bush. The word demons is actually a Greek word, a Greek term, and it means knowledge. And there is no doubt that the things operating largely through the medium of the mind, the voice of local service provider, like a spam bot emailer that's just waiting for you to grab on one of the little emails, and it knows which one you selected, and from that point forward it only sends that one out. And going hand in hand with that, the little realm crosser guys that are dearly wanting to collect some genetics if they can get their clutches and their little bitty fingertips on it, so that they can have, perhaps even for a moment, maybe a body of their own. And considering their, shall we call it, predicament, I can't say that I blame them. The sales pitch has always got some kind of little trinket or carrot on a stick to put right out in front of mankind and dank. Well, there's got to be a carrot on a stick, because if you could see what you were dealing with eye to eye, you would run so far from it that to run any farther would actually be coming back. I'm not saying that to be harsh. That's the only way the thing knows to get relief. In the case of Solomon, he hit his knees and he asked God for wisdom. And because of who Solomon's father was, King David, a man who stood up to a giant in the name of the Father of all that is, was, or remains to come, in benefit of that man, God granted Solomon's request for wisdom. But here's the thing that often gets forgotten, is that before David died and Solomon took the throne, David told Solomon, he said, when you become king, ask God for 2 things. King David told his son to first ask for a heart after God, and to second ask for wisdom. But when Solomon got the empire, he forgot about that heart after God business, and he just asked for the wisdom, and he got all of the trappings that always come with knowledge, whether it's good or evil knowledge. But evil will only ever last a time, and then it has its price. In Solomon's case, he invited in all sorts of foreign wives because it seemed like a great idea at the time. And then the mess began, where they began asking him to sacrifice to their foreign gods, the demons. Please, Solomon, just put a little incense on the fire for our gods. Please, Solomon, just make a little room inside your life for the devil. Please, Solomon, just give Satan a little bit of space within your empire. In the end, he would have given every ounce every speck of gold and everything that he had back. And he cried out as much, vanities, vanities. If he could merely go back in time and change that one request. It's not just that there were only 2 trees back in that garden, and we were even told which one was the wrong one to pick in advance. But I would argue that through all of this, that God himself has been mopping up our mess and cleaning up our crises through every stumbly, stupid footstep that we've made the entire time, and giving us get out of jail free cards at his own expense this entire time. I'm Trey Smith, and I pray that wisdom not only fill and flood your mind and be beneath every footstep on your path of this journey. But one step further than that is the request that you'll have to make yourself. And if you listen to my story about Solomon, you already know what that request is.